Hey friends, thanks for joining me today. My name is Carrie, and today is the 57th anniversary of the death of our 35th president, John F. Kennedy. And while I don't think all of the questions surrounding John F. Kennedy's assassination will be answered, I do think it's important that we continue to ask the questions. This channel is part of my feeble attempt to ask and answer some of those questions. This week I read Betrayal in Dallas, LBJ, the Pearl Street Mafia, and the Murder of President Kennedy by Mark North. I went into this book with pretty high expectations because the book jacket makes a very bold claim. It says, "The incredible solution to the crime of the 20th century." That's setting the bar pretty high for a book that totals about 162 pages, not including the exhibits, source notes, and bibliography. I did appreciate the fact that the book was very readable, short, and it didn't include a lot of frivolous, unnecessary details. Some JFK assassination books, in my opinion, get too mired in a lot of very tiny, minuscule details, with the hope that one of those small details will be the key to solving President Kennedy's murder. While I appreciate the thoroughness of those books, in my opinion, it can become a bit overwhelming and unnecessary. This book suffered from the opposite problem: too little information. This is an unusual take on the Mafia angle to the Kennedy assassination. The author actually postulates that it was Attorney General Robert Kennedy's targeted prosecution of the Dallas Sevillo crime family that made John F. Kennedy a target for assassination. You might be asking yourself, how is Vice President Johnson wrapped up in this? Well, Johnson, who had powerful ties to and influence over the Dallas District Attorney Henry Wade and Judge Sarah Hughes, was able to stop prosecution just after the Kennedy assassination of many of these Sevillo Mafia associates. This is mainly a book about Texas corruption. The federal prosecutors who were responsible for prosecuting the Texas Mafia simultaneously denied its existence while frequenting its anonymous clubs. At this point in our history, it's very well known that Vice President Johnson was actually under some corruption investigation at the time of President Kennedy's assassination. And once President Kennedy was assassinated, all congressional inquiries into Johnson's activities ceased because at this point it was necessary for Vice President Johnson to take the oath of office and become president. And the country was in crisis. So you don't, in 1963, really want to be investigating a president, particularly a president who has just taken over for a murdered president. The author theorizes that President Johnson was able to use his influence to prevent Jack Ruby's ties to the Sevillo Mafia from becoming public. The exhibit section in the back of the book was probably one of the most interesting parts of this book to me, and I love when JFK assassination books include these, where you actually see the documents. And of course, some of the documents are still redacted. The exhibits did seem to show a connection between the Sevillo Mafia bookmaking operation and Jack Ruby, of course, the assassin of Lee Harvey Oswald, who was the presumed assassin of the president. The author included documentation related to the U.S. versus John Eli Stone case, which was halted after the John F. Kennedy assassination. It also included some very bizarre correspondence between the Dallas District Attorney Henry Wade and Vice President Lyndon Johnson. Wade continuously addresses Lyndon Johnson as Mr. President, as if he expects him to be so or he wishes him to be so, even though these letters were dated 1962 and 1961. This is especially odd to me considering both of them probably knew that Johnson was being investigated at the time for possible corruption in the Billy Saul Estes case, and he was in serious danger of being dropped from the 1964 Democratic ticket and in jeopardy of losing even that vice president title. There's a quote in the book from the Dallas Morning News that I found especially chilling. When Vice President Johnson was trying to convince Kennedy to come to Texas, he unexpectedly announced in front of some reporters that they would be planning a visit to Dallas in the fall. And Johnson says, "At least wait until November before you shoot him down." This is a common phrase, but now it has a very eerie feeling to it. The exhibits and glossary of names in this book is extremely helpful, and the author does tell you that he tries to avoid excessive citations, so he tries to do, one endnote for a long passage. However, there were several revelations that I found that didn't have a source noted at all. One is pretty key to the assassination itself. On page 74, the author talks about a naive Oswald believing that he's part of a public demonstration in favor of Castro's Cuba. It claims that he carried a rolled up pro-Castro or pro-Cuba poster or flag into the Texas School Book Depository with him instead of the 6.5 Carcano rifle. This may be something that's cited in the author's previous book, Act of Treason, which I've never read, but I would like to know where that information came from. The other information about Oswald being in the second floor lunchroom, of course I've heard that before and I've seen that in many different sources, but this information about Oswald bringing in a pro-Castro or pro-Cuba flag or poster, I've never heard that, so I'm just wondering where that source came from. And maybe it's in the other book, I just don't know. Especially since the author is claiming that Oswald is completely uninvolved in the assassination of the president and in the murder of police officer J.D. Tippit. I really want to know where that source came from. On that note, if Oswald is being controlled by a, quote, handler, who is this force? Is it CIA? Is it FBI? Is it some sort of pro-Castro or anti-Castro organization? This is not addressed in the book. Some of the typical players that are addressed in JFK assassination books are conspicuously absent from this one. This book's primary focus is the Dallas criminal underbelly and Johnson's connections to it. It's very short and easy to read. I would recommend it, but I wouldn't expect to find definitive answers. I'm going to link a website in the description box. It's the National Archives JFK Assassination Records page. I would recommend scrolling to the What's New Online section, where you can look at the records related to key persons. There are more than 5 million pages of JFK files in the National Archives. Obviously, I have not looked at them all, and most are probably not related to whatever topic you're inquiring about. So I found this website and how they have it organized very helpful. I'm going to sign off with the words of John F. Kennedy from his commencement speech at American University on June 10th, 1963. So, let us not be blind to our differences, but let us also direct our attention to our common interest and to the means by which those differences can be resolved. And if we cannot now end our differences, at least we can help make the world safe for diversity. For in the final analysis, our most basic common link is that we all inhabit this small planet, we all breathe the same air, we all cherish our children's future, and we are all mortal, even John F. Kennedy.